everybody, welcome back. Today I am going to be doing my December wrap-up. So these are the books I used to reach my 2015 goal of reading 100 books. And I was really excited to get that done. I feel so accomplished. So here are the books that helped me do it in the month of December. The month of December was a fantastic reading month for me. I only DNF'd one book, which was pretty good out of the deal. The book I DNF'd for December was Thunder by Bonnie S. Calhoun. This was advertised as a clean read on like christianbooks.com and on Goodreads and whatnot, so I picked it up and I wanted to check it out. It's a futuristic dystopian where these certain people land on shore. They're called landers, and they have these wing-like tattoos on them, and people hunt them, kidnap them, and take them to get paid for them, so it's a huge deal to be hunting landers. Sela as a girl does not get to do this. She does not get to be a hunter. In fact, she is bargained off into an arranged marriage, but one day she actually comes across a lander on shore and kind of changes her life from there. She goes from being the hunter to the hunted. This book started out with a pretty decent premise, but I was halfway through it and going nowhere. They were constantly going back to the same place and we weren't really getting anywhere on any sort of quest, so it was really dragging and really getting annoying. And the guy was shirtless most of the time, and of course we all knew when he was shirtless because she would not stop thinking about it, talking about it. Like, it just, there was so much physical attraction and discussion of that physical attraction that it just got overbearing and really annoying, and I ended up DNFing it just out of annoyance. So it was still pretty mild for sexual content, but it was just juvenile and really annoying. So yeah, I DNF'd this book just out of sheer annoyance. The first book I read in the month of December was A Whole New World, A Twisted Tale by Liz Braswell. This is a retelling of the Disney's Aladdin movie. Essentially, it's the Aladdin story retold, but it's verbatim almost the Aladdin Disney version. The first half of the book is pretty spot on to the movie. Then you get to the twist. So it is a twisted fairy tale. So it's if Aladdin wasn't the one that ended up with the lamp. This book I rated 3 stars because it was a bit of a disappointment to me. The first half was, like I said, verbatim the movie, so it was a little strange for me. I guess that's what they needed to do to have the twist. Yet the second half of the book was extremely dark and very violent for the demographic that it was advertised for. Jafar was a very sick and twisted villain, even more so than he was in the Disney movie. Some things that he did were just so sadistic, I was wondering why they were even in this book, because the demographic who are going to pick up this book are the demographic that enjoyed the Disney-fied version of the movie. Another thing I didn't like is the completely different personalities of some of the characters. Jasmine had a very strong, overbearing personality. She was a very strong female character in the movie that didn't take things lying down, but in the book she was almost overbearing to the fact of just controlling everybody around her. Aladdin was too much of a good character and less of a morally gray character, which I found he was in the movie, but in the book he was almost too much of a goody two-shoes. Genie was a depression. He was just a depressing character, and I'm sure because he didn't end up with Aladdin he would have been, but this was just, even toward the end, he was still a depressing character. So this was a disappointing read for me. I still finished it. I would just give it kind of a content warning for really dark paranormal and really dark violence and some graphic violence and sacrificing. So it had some content in the violence and paranormal department. The next book I finished via audiobook, and that is Expelled by Cornelia Funk. This audiobook is narrated by Brendan Fraser, who plays Mo in the movie adaptation of Inkheart. I enjoyed the book. His narration was really well done, but the book was extremely slow moving and there was moments where it was a little boring, and so I only gave it a 3-star rating just because of the slowness. But the Ink world itself is a very beautiful world that I enjoyed being in, and I enjoyed Brendan Fraser's narration of the book. Next I read Chivalrous by Diana Slyman. I hate this name. But I read Chivalrous, and this is book 2 in the Valiant Hearts trilogy. Dauntless is book 1. I gave Dauntless a little overhype when I first read it on booktube here. It was very good. It had that medievally romantic feel to it, but I enjoyed Chivalrous far better than the first book. It had some great strong qualities to it. Even from the intro to the readers, the dear readers part had me sold before I even started the book. She states here in her to readers, follow your dreams and be who you want to be. If Prince Charming or Knight in Shining Armor so happens to show up and join you in your goals and your dreams and your vision, then by so be it. But you are precious and you are loved just the way you are was the gist of her letter to her readers at the beginning of the book, and that theme carried on throughout this book. It was a fantastic read. It was a great read of faith as well as women coming together to support one another, and again a strong female character who is not afraid to admit when she needs help. I gave this book a 4-star rating. There was only a few things that bothered me. There's a little bit of repetitive use of some words and just repetitiveness, and at some points it got a little too, okay, I'm not surprised it's kind of cheesy, but it had really good qualities that kind of overshadowed some of the repetitiveness in the book. I then read book 4 of Miss Marvel, The Last Days. This series is fantastic. I like where it's going. I love the progression and the growth of Camilla's character, and you're really starting to see that take shape in these later issues. So I'm really excited to see where this series is going. I then finally got to read Winter by Marissa Meyer, and it finally wrapped up the series in a very satisfying way. I love this as a retelling series because at some point I forgot it was even a retelling, so when the fairy tale retelling elements came into play, it was a surprise, and it was really cool to see how they were put into the book. Again, this had a fantastic ensemble of characters. It had a really satisfying ending, and I gave it a 4-star rating. It did get slow at some points. It was an extremely long book, and we could have done without a few things to make it a little less slow in some parts, but it was still a pretty fast-paced read for me. I give this a mild to moderate content rating. It was still overall genuinely clean aside from some of the violence. Some of the kissing scenes went from a mild to a moderate as they were a little bit more intense and more described, but overall it didn't bother me, so I kept it at a mild to moderate content rating for Winter. The next book I read was the Peruse-topia book pick of the month, and that was Soundless by Rochelle Mead. This one I gave a 3-star rating to. This is a Chinese folklore. It's about a village that is in this very high, remote, dense part of the mountains, and they have a trade system with, I guess, the people on below that they've never met. They trade precious metals for food. The unique thing about this village is that they are all deaf, and they have been deaf for generations. And then slowly in the village, people are now starting to go blind, which is a big problem if you communicate visually. So Faye leaves the village or goes on this quest to kind of find out what is happening to her people and how to save her people. I loved the cultural elements to it. I love Asian cultural elements. I used to read a lot of manga, and what I appreciated was the respect for elders and just the genuine cultural element to it. It's hard to say, but I really enjoyed how that was implemented in the book, and it showed that the author did her research. It is a very short book. It did have a couple of slow moments where you kind of wanted it to keep going, but overall it was a satisfying ending, and it was actually a pretty good ending. This book had a mild content rating. It was still mild content between the two, the male and female character, but overall it wasn't anything that I would flag as content rating. It was still overall a clean book to read. This was a part where it hit Christmas time, and I felt like I was going to fall behind or not make it to my reading goal, and so to finish up my reading goal, I finished Visioneering by Andy Stanley. This is a non-fiction Christian living book. It talks about developing your vision, and at first I thought it was a book when you had like a specific ministry, job, business, or idea in mind. So when I first picked this book, I was focusing on what my vision was for my booktube channel and how I wanted to present that to people. But it slowly turned into more than that. It was more like your vision for your life, your vision as a single person, your vision for your family, your vision for your ministry, for your just general everyday job. So it was really cool to have that implemented. It uses the book of Nehemiah and Nehemiah's vision in rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. So overall, I gave this a 5-star rating. It is a book that my mentor and I work through once a week, and it was overall a fantastic read. Andy Stanley has a very biblical and very strong way of looking at things that is very grounded. So I enjoyed his writing perspective in that. The last 2 books I read, I kind of read on a panic mode binge moment because I was putting these books off because they aren't my favorite books, but they're not my favorite books for a reason. And they are The Silver Chair and The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis. I've been putting these off for so long because it is the end of Narnia, and I just didn't want it to end. The Silver Chair, I absolutely fell in love with Puddleglum all over again. I only met him in the audiobook form, so reading about him in the book form, he is my hero. I loved him. I did though give this book a 3-star rating just because it wasn't my favorite Narnia book out of them, and I felt it was just lacking in some places that I found. But overall, how can you fault a classic and a writer like C.S. Lewis? For The Last Battle, I gave it a 4-star rating. I found this book super creepy when I was listening to the audiobook. It just has that end of world revelations freakiness type to it, and it was just overall kind of a creepier book and a sadder end to what was going on. But again, it has a happier ending and has a really brilliant ending, and it's still a really brilliantly written book, which is why I gave it 4 stars. But again, it's not my favorite Narnia book because it is the end of Narnia, and I hate seeing something so beautiful come to an end. And that is it. That is the books I read in December. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have read any of these, if you want more information on some of my content viewing, and any information on the books in general. So as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.